There we go. How's everybody?
Fantastic. How are you?
Oh, excited to be here. Oh no. I hope everybody didn't have as much trouble getting on tonight as I did. I don't know what's going on tonight, but hopefully everybody can get in tonight. Since this is our favorite weeks, is when y'all don't have to hear me talk too much. Well, you have to more than you want to, but y'all get to talk a little. Dr. Stedman, are you there?
I am.
All right.
Got some earbuds I could stick them in one ear.
Let's see who we got. Paulette, prayers for you. Hope things are going well for you and your family. Glad to see that you've joined us tonight. And I see Kayla sent me an email. We got to congratulate Kayla. She got a new job today. So congratulations. She's moving up to the big time. She's moving from the middle school to the high school. And so congratulations to you for that. I don't know if we have any more that we need to share. A lot of success. We've had a good summer in terms of folks interviewing and getting jobs. Don't forget, on the 21st of this month, I'm going to be doing an interview session, and I'll post that link so you folks can get in. So some of you may be interviewing this summer for jobs for the fall. And so we'll invite you to come out along with our 605s who are finishing in August 1st. And so I'll be doing an interview session. Those materials are already in our shells. You can kind of take a look at those, and I'll work you through those materials, and we'll talk specifically about those 4 levels of interviews that you normally would go through. Different districts do it different ways, but pretty much there are 4 types of interviews. I got feedback from a student, I guess in the last week or so, that a lot of districts are beginning to go ahead and start doing all the levels of interviews virtually. And so our first level is a virtual interview that we talk about. So many of those things will be relative to what you're going to be put through this summer. So we'll do that on the 21st. Anything else that we need to celebrate? Dr. Stedman, let me share my screen. I have put a section in our shell with some materials in it. Let me get rid of that.
Wait, I think I know.
I threw it in my bag. Not that I can find it.
And so, let me unmute. All right. There we go. Okay, Dr. Stedman's unmuted now. So what I have done, I have a section in each of our shells. Again, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. Katie did a folio tracker for us where you can kind of tell what you need for each of those, where you might find them. That's in there. I have the competence folio artifacts from the 6 evidences. Let me pull that one up. And so we did the OMA, the skip. Some of you have done the CAP. As you can see, I have them categorized by number. So for example, in the OMA, when we did that, your SACS report and the report card, if you'll remember, that was the first 2 documents you had to locate for OMA Task 1. Those would fit under competencies 10, 16, and 18, and those competencies are 10, global perspective, 16, results orientation, obviously, and 18, systems thinking. So that's how that works. And so I have each of the things that you would have normally come across this summer: SACS report, the report card, the school improvement plan, your teacher working conditions survey, your best practices data from classroom walkthrough. Remember, that was OMA Task 2. We went back to that data from the APTEL. Our federal, state, and local EC guidelines. Again, the NC report card, your EC survey, Power School scheduling manual. I've got the old NC WISE one there. Some still use that manual for Power School. Your federal, state laws, board policy manual, best practices, abstracts. Again, that's from your APTEL. Your process plan, duty roster, master schedule, supervision schedule. All those are artifacts from the work that you did in the OMA. And then, of course, here are the ones from the SCIP. I won't read through all of those, but you can see, and those things are artifacts that fit those competencies. And then the third and final thing that I have in there for you is open-ended. And let me pull that one up. And so if you have addressed a large or small group of adults, that would be dialogue, inquiry, or communication. If you've conducted a parent group meeting, that's change management. If you have participated in one teacher applicant interview session, that's judgment. Direct one planning activity session, that's delegation, personal responsiveness. And so this ought to be your roadmap to where your artifacts are from this summer. You should be able to find them relatively easily and get them in your competency folio. Now, next week, Dr. Stedman is going to do a session with you in our regular class next week on this. So hopefully you'll get started on this before then, but he's going to follow up and do this next week with you to make sure that, that you've got the artifacts in there that you need for your third round. I had a question. That reminds me, I had a question about the PSYOP and the CAP. Those of you who are moving into those, the CAP does not have competency analysis as its last task. The PSYOP has all 21 for competency analysis in it. So for those of you who have started on your CAP and you get to task 4 and you say, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the last task normally looks, it doesn't. That's not a mistake. That 13 that should be there have been moved to the last one, the SOP. You do all 21 in it. That's competency analysis. But that just is just a reminder. All right, anybody have any questions? Let me view the chats right quick. I'm guessing Dr. Stedman is looking at those.
I don't think there's anything so far.
All right, so we're good to go. All right, I won't belabor the point then. Let me close some of these documents so that we can get to the good stuff here. All right, so we're on our third case study tonight, case study 3. This is Jimmy and Willie, and you've read the case. And so we had some questions to answer. Answer the questions you find at the end of the narrative. And there they are. And so we'll go ahead and get started. And so leading us off tonight from our C4 section will be Nathan, Julia, Dwayne, and Megan. And so let me pull up theirs. And we'll get started.
Okay, this is Julia. I'm going first. So we have the reaction that the principal had from the parents, emails and phone calls and letters and petitions about this thing that we kind of felt was kind of like an archaic thing that should have already been dealt with, but since it wasn't, you know, we have to address what we have to address. This is actually the wrong slides. I had to send you 2 because I clicked on the wrong file.
Okay, let me, I thought this is the one I uploaded from the email. Let me go back to the email.
I'm sorry. It was my fault. We were sending it back and forth and I uploaded the wrong one the first time.
Okay, is this the one?
I don't know why it's only showing the 4. Oh, that's great.
It's a bunch of slides. It's like
Yeah,
13 slides.
there's like 12 or 13 of them.
Okay. This is just 4.
Yeah.
I can share my screen. I can, who's got one that's the one you want us to see, and I'll share my screen with you.
I have mine pulled up.
All right.
This is Nathan.
Yep. I'm going to make you the host. Yes, and I'm going to stop my share. And I will stop my video, which will help you, and you should be able to share your screen.
All righty. This should
All right. Thanks, Nathan. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine.
All right. Is that where you want to start, Julia?
Yeah, that's fine. If you want to start with the summary of the case, so we can, since we're going first.
Were you starting, Julia?
The first slide, the case summary.
Yeah.
No, I made Nathan the host.
Can you see it?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. All right. My bad. I thought you guys could see it. My bad.
Well, I have it pulled up on my computer, so while you're sharing it, I'm just going to go ahead and start.
Okay.
And that way we don't have to waste anybody's time. And again, I apologize to the group. So what happened was Jimmy and Willie were these 2 students. Jimmy and Willie were these 2 students who began dating. The reaction to their relationship was unpleasant when they started holding hands and kissing in public. They expressed their interest in attending prom together as a couple. The principal, Mary Lou Hines, responded to phone calls, letters, and emails from outraged parents. They threatened to boycott the school, and 2 petitions began circulating and being signed. One of them was condemning the boys' relationship and the school officials, and the other one was in order to cancel prom. Mary Lou met with Jimmy and Willie multiple times, expressing concern and asking them to hold off their relationship until after graduation. Jimmy, Willie, and their parents did not agree. They said Mary Lou was infringing on the boys' First Amendment rights to free speech, and the boys wanted to have their day of diversity, day of silence, and form a gay-straight alliance club. Mary Lou put it off until further studies could be conducted.
Can you see now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry.
And then that was the principal's reaction to all of this hitting her plate. And then we were going to pass it off to Anthony.
Hello. And well, the veiled threat, the principal's words such as, first of all, a veiled threat is covered or concealed by, and a threat is a statement of intention to inflict pain, injury, or damage for a hostile act or some type of retribution. And the principal's words such as to speak some sense, a couple of months away, and postpone plans pending further study. All of these were threats to tell them that, hey, this is not acceptable, that we're not going to do this. And then the students threatened, the students were threatened by the principal, the students, the community, verbally and physically. All of these are a violation of the students' First and 14th Amendment rights. And it's also a violation of the 63 Civil Rights Act, 2001 Child Left Behind, so on and so forth. You can move to the next slide. Now, Mary Lou's personal responsibilities were the Boston v. Clayton versus Georgia, which was a Supreme Court decision, which a person cannot be discriminated against due to their sexual orientation. And discrimination was taking place due to the actions of the parents and by the teacher, because she was putting off and not standing up for the rights of the students, because first and foremost, we as educators and administrators must follow the law. And also bullying, harassing were taking place with the behavior, with innuendos of faggot and so on and so forth, put forth by the parents and the son and the daughter. And they also, Willie and Jimmy, the students' rights, they have the right to express themselves. And all this is followed by the student rights and responsibilities in the handbook. We'll move on. And this is Megan.
All right, guys. So I just said that whenever they were referencing prom, that overall, like, the students should be able to go to the prom. Ordinarily, when you go to buy prom tickets, you're not asked if you're going with the same or the opposite like sex, much less like who you're actually going with. It's never really a question. You just go. And you or your date will buy the tickets to the prom. And then we talked about, even if they did try to stop the students from going to the prom, there's no way to really stop them from going separate. And then, when you get to the prom, you hook up as a couple or whatever. So we don't think that it's acceptable that they cannot attend based on their date or their sexuality. And then we just said that it was fine if the students wanted to boycott the prom because their parents are upset, or if they're upset, and that's their personal choice. But when it comes to the junior and senior class, there's a lot of money put into it. There's a lot of work that goes into prom. And we don't think that, canceling the prom or punishing the junior and senior class would be fair. And then we discussed the solutions for Jerry and Cindy Hudson. We talked about updating the handbook, and like if, PDA in school is a problem, then to update the handbook and put that in there and make sure that it's stated that, it's for opposite sex couples and same sex couples, that they're very specific in that if that's an issue. We think that the students should have their day of diversity with the faculty and staff to help, but make sure that there's academic activities that go with the standards. Invite the students who the parents who religious heritage is being mocked to participate, to come up with their own activities. So the kids should be able to participate, but when it comes to the students who are boycotting, maybe there needs to be alternate activities to go along with that day. For those who are not in agreement. And then the administration should express sympathy towards Jerry and Cindy, but also let them know that as administration, it is your job to side with the law, and you have to protect all of your students by law and their safety.
So how we would deal with the cyberbullying, we basically said that we would need to go back through the policy and warn the community, people coming out against Jimmy and Willie, that they need to be careful and do what's right, because you're skirting the line of illegal activity when you start bullying, either face-to-face or cyberbullying. Page 129 of the Principal's Guide to School Law, I'm sure you all saw that, but Gitlow versus New York. Speech loses its First Amendment protection when it conflicts with other important social interests. So full protection from freedom of speech is limited. It's definitely limited when something's obscene, disruptive, heckling, and bullying falls under this. Mary Lou, the principal, she needs to remind all of her students of the school system's anti-bullying policy. She needs to remind them of the behavior that she expects as principal in her school. She needs to outline that so it is clear, and she needs to define what bullying behaviors are so that kids know what's going on, and she needs to explain those consequences if they choose to bully Willie and Jimmy, or really anyone else. She also needs to offer procedures. Even though they may already exist, she needs to make sure that the student body knows the procedures to report bullying. And this would all help, since everybody is, not everybody, but a portion of these people are intent on basically disrupting the lives of Jimmy and Willie, that they need to know about, you know, what bullying is and try to prevent it before it even happens. We talked about the antecedent behaviors. And the antecedents are events or environments that trigger a behavior. So a behavior is an action, observable and measurable, and it's provoked by the antecedent. So we went back to North Carolina General Statute 29C. Bullying or harassing behavior includes, but it is not limited to, acts that reasonably are perceived as being motivated by an actual or perceived differentiating characteristics such as sexual orientation. So that they are protected by state law. No student or school employee is to be bullied or harassed by school employees or other students, or really parents for that matter. So Mary Lou is guilty of heckler's veto in all this. I kind of love the way that comes off the tongue, heckler's veto. But basically, a heckler's veto is, to what extent shall the actions of the hostile audience, that would be the Hudsons and hateful students, how much should that be allowed to interfere with the constitutional rights of Jimmy and Willie? Basically, it cannot. So Mary Lou cannot limit the First and 14th Amendment rights of Jimmy and Willie in order to protect them from what's about to happen. Of course, through her veiled threats, I think she's really more or less trying to protect herself from all the stress that's going on. But anyway, she can't, under a heckler's veto, she can't even argue that her actions toward Jimmy and Willie are to maintain order and discipline in the school, because she doesn't have a reasonable suspicion that there is going to be any violence or major disruption. She's just had some threats, and you can't do that because of threats, because those threats are bullying and protected by law.
We looked up what the ACLU has to say about the rights of the LGBT students and LGBTQ, and gay student rights. And they said that as far as the club, the GSAs, it's a non-curricular student club, just like any other student club. So students have the right to have that club, especially if you have other clubs in your school. This also applies to their wanting to have the day of diversity, their day of silence, and the formation of this club, as long as the students follow the school procedures for those events. As far as maybe requesting the proper paperwork be filled out, depending on how the school's procedures work, they should be allowed to have them according to the ACLU. As far as school dances go, the ACLU says the public schools can't stop you from bringing a same-sex date or prom to homecoming who otherwise is allowed to attend, nor can they tell you that you can't dress a certain way or run for prom king or queen because it doesn't fit traditional gender roles. So we just looked up, what they would have to say, because you really don't want the ACLU coming in and making a big to-do about things. Our 4 paradigms: justice, the principal is ethically bound to follow the law and support the rights of students regardless of his or her personal beliefs, and regardless of the fact that they're being pressured by the community and by parents and other students. Care, the principal is ethically responsible for nurturing and encouraging students, providing appropriate support and discipline if needed. We talked a little bit about the fact that the PDA, they were seen kissing and holding hands. They need to be held to the same standard as the opposite sex students, but the rules apply to everyone, which is why we said they should probably update the handbook just to reflect that. Critique, the principal is ethically responsible for human rights of students. That includes the ones that we discussed and any other rights that may be violated in the future, which is why this is so important. And professionalism, the principal is ethically responsible for the safeguarding of values of democracy, equity, and diversity, considering and evaluating moral and legal consequences, and promoting social justice and best interests of students' rights, responsibilities, and respect for everyone.
Excellent. Excellent presentation. All right, so Couple of points that I want to make before we go to Laquetta, Casey, Tina, and Danelle. What was the principal's first mistake? The principal made a lot of mistakes here. But what was the principal's first mistake? And your next to last slide encapsulated it. What was the first mistake the principal made? Nathan, where are you?
I'm sorry, I stopped sharing again.
Okay.
I can go back to it. I
No,
go right
no,
back to
but just tell me off the top of your head.
the
Julia,
first. Okay.
Megan, tell me what the first mistake the principal made was.
The principal violated the rights of the student.
But before they violated the rights, you got it. You got this one right. The next to the last slide, you got it right. This all started with PDAs, right? In the library.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what didn't the principal or the administrative team do?
Stop it.
They didn't stop it.
Yeah.
And that's how it got out into the community and got everybody all fired up.
Yeah.
Now, just because they got fired up, you're right. That has no bearing on the case. We can't just let the lynch mob, the hecklers veto crowd, shout us down from what to do. But one of the points I always want to make with this case is, remember that there's one constant in school about due process, discipline, behavior, culture, climate. The little things will become the big things if you don't address them early on. By the time that she got to this, by the time it got to her desk, it was already completely out of control. It was already sideways. Now, at that point, it's going to run over you at that point. The trick is to keep it from getting to that point. And you're exactly right. Jimmy and Willie should be subjected to the same rules that everybody else in the business is on PDAs. I can't know that. This is a case study, but I can tell you, if you don't handle the little things, they will become the big things. And so that's the point I always want to bring about on this case is it could have been different. It might have been the same, but it certainly doesn't help when you let things get out of control and you react you're reactive rather than proactive. It never goes well for you in school administration. You need to be out front dealing with things and not wait until they become such a big mess that they envelop you as an administrative team. And it's not just in cases like this. It's always if you ignore things that are going on, eventually people will push and push until you're over the line. You have to stop them early on.
Dr. Lane.
So that's the point that I wanted to make. Yes.
I was going to say, my principal always said that that's the first thing kids say is, well, you let these kids do the same thing and you don't say anything.
The standards of arbitrary and capricious. Me and Nathan get caught smoking out back, and they send Nathan back to the classroom and they shoot me. That's capricious. That's too much punishment. But it's also arbitrary. And kids will do what they see, let them do. Now, one of the things that I often advise when I work more specifically with school administrators, when we go out and do staff development with them on disciplinary data collection and those kinds of things, one of the things I talk about in antecedent behaviors is these kind of sexual things tend to be the ones that snowball the fastest. Of all the incident categories that get out of control and get sideways the fastest, it's always the sexual stuff that gets out of control the fastest. And if I insult you, I'm sorry, but boys are stupid. I used to be one. It's been a long time. And one of the things that young boys, especially early adolescence, and even through later adolescence, one of the things that boys have a hard time with, and this is not my opinion, this is, child psychiatrists and psychologists and sociologists will tell you that. One of the things that boys really struggle with is that notion that Nathan just talked about is if I see somebody else doing it, that means I can do it too. Boys struggle with that concept of self-restraint, self-control, self-esteem, self-image. They struggle with that. And so if you don't tell them what their boundary is, and they see somebody else doing it, they will follow right behind. That is one of the characteristics of early adolescent boys. Girls are generally much better about that. Now, girls will they will be more subject to peer pressure from other girls, but they're not as bad as boys to see a behavior and say and make the connection. If he can do that, I can do that. And so one of the things you really have to work hard on with middle school kids is convincing girls you can't let your boyfriend do inappropriate things with you because other boys will think they get a turn too. And that's one of those things that kind of gets out of control in middle school. You're exactly right. If you don't stop those things, they will happen, especially with early adolescents, because that's a function of boys' development, unfortunately. So the little things become the big things. I'm going to tell a quick story before we go. I was a high school principal. I had a parent who came to me. He was a parent on our booster club and was a well-to-do parent at our school. In terms of his participation, he had a child there who was an athlete, was a good family. But they were angry at me because a student at the school who was a freshman came to the prom with their son who was a senior. They all knew. They took pictures. It was all wonderful until, according to them, she got pregnant on prom night. And then they blamed the school, as if I could have stopped her from coming to school. It goes to your point. You can't get into that. That's what I have seen when cases have come to me for consultancy to weigh in on, or to be a consultant, or have asked a legal opinion on. That's one of the things that I tell schools very, very much up front. Don't get into this notion of you as the school administration arbitrarily trying to say who can and can't come to the prom. That won't solve your problem with transgender kids or gay kids or biracial couples, those kinds of things. That is not the solution. So I just wanted to kind of conclude my part on that. Although when something goes bad or parents will be looking, you can't do that either. You can't say, well, I'll stop this problem by saying this person can't come to the prom, or that person, or this is an interracial couple, I won't let. No, you can't get into that. You're not allowed to do that either, where you say, well, I'm not stopping the gay couple from coming in. I'm just saying that this person can't. No, that is not your out. I've had students and professionals in the field argue that the way to avoid this is to limit who can come to the prom. That's illegal as well. That is not your solution. And so you need to know that up front. I had a student about a year ago. It was actually a doctoral student from a far western county, and that was her solution. No, you couldn't let them come. We'll just we'll say that it's not about Jimmy and Willie. We'll just say that these can't come to the prom. No, that's just discrimination, disguised as something else. So make sure you don't get into that as well. And parents will be unreasonable, as the parents were of the student that I had. It was all fun and games until the 14-year-old girl got pregnant by the 18-year-old boy, and then they wanted somebody to blame. So but you can't get into that. You can't get into those kinds of things. All right. So our next group, do you want me to share, or are y'all ready to share? That'd be Casey, Tina, Danelle, and LaQuetta. Y'all want to share, or you want me to share? I see we've got Casey. I see we've got Danelle.
If you can share it.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll share my screen and go to that one. Share, and I'll find it right quick. Let me move this out of the way. Let's see who I've got here. This would be it. Okay.
Okay, this is Tina.
Hey, Tina.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Okay, we just discussed the different amendments that protect the rights of, that's what this indicates on this PowerPoint slide. It just talks about the Title IX, which protects people from discrimination based on sex and education programs or activities that receive federal financial assistance. And then the growing number of states are taking additional steps themselves to protect the LGBTQ youth by explicitly including sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression in laws that protect against discrimination and harassment in schools. So some schools are taking that upon themselves to do that. And then the Equal Access Act has also been used to fight opposition to gay, straight alliances in schools across the nation. The act requires that if the school permits any religious student group, just as they mentioned in the previous group did, that it allows the groups, it must allow all groups, whether it be religion or non-religion related. And then under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, student expression is protected. And I wrote down that the principal was very negligent in the ethical paradigms of care, because when she stated that she urged the parents to speak sense and to the boys, she wasn't making she wasn't showing concern and a connection. And whether she agreed with it or not, there are laws to protect the rights of those students and how they're feeling and how they're dealing with those situations. And she also was unprofessional as she did not model the principles of ethical behavior. She did not safeguard the values of their diversity, and she did not consider the legal consequences of the decisions that she was making. And she was more concerned really with the school than she was with the rights of doing what was best for those boys. So as someone mentioned earlier, if she would have followed, most oftentimes in the school there's already a code of conduct that focuses on PDA. So if she would have taken care of that, they were actually two different situations. The PDA, if she would have followed the code of conduct, that would have been taken care of.
Right. That's exactly right.
I think that's the largest thing that we talked about, was just that if she would have just followed the code of conduct, then it wouldn't have been an issue. She didn't even have to speak to them about their relationship.
Exactly. If you'd handled the little thing, the big thing wouldn't have assumed you like it did. But we let this get out of control. Now, when those other parents wanted to talk to her about Jimmy and Willie, what law was she violating there?
The FERPA or
FERPA.
Yeah,
that's correct. So you're exactly right. Her ethical behavior was lacking in her professional judgment, but she also broke the law in terms of just talking with somebody about somebody else's children. You can't do that. You're not allowed to do that.
and just because that you have, just like we stated on this slide, the First Amendment allows students to express themselves at school, but school officials can restrict a person's freedom of expression only in certain situations if there is a ruling that just like the boys said, that they would not refrain, they did not intend to refrain from public displays of affection. Well, they really don't have a choice in that situation if
Right.
it's code of conduct that, so,
Yeah. That's exactly right. Okay, let's get to our questions here. Would you consider Mary Lou's comments a veiled threat?
couple were destructive to the learning process.
I think we decided that we would.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I
about
would
what we
say
put on
that-
there, but her comments to them as far as, like, can't you wait till after graduation?
Right.
Away. So.
Yeah. And I would consider that, you know, that she was going to ban them from the pond for their own safety. I don't know how much, I mean, that's not a veiled threat. That's a direct threat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much, if you show up, you know, something bad's going to happen. What are her responsibilities under the law?
Well, she has to let them attend. She can't stop them from attending the prom, as like they said previously, the group before us. She can stop them from showing displays of public affection, but she cannot stop them from attending prom and coming dressed as they wish, as long as it follows the rules that are outlined for every other student.
Right. It's just like the male student I had in high school that wore a dress. He just had to wear a dress as long as the girls did. Mm-hmm. And when I sent him home, didn't send him home because he was wearing a dress. His dress violated the dress code. It wasn't, you know, when he put his hands down to his side, it was, you know, his hands came down below the hem of his dress, and that was the rule. You know, your dress had to come down to the end of your arms, into your tips of your fingers. And when his didn't, he went home. Now, when he came back with a longer dress on, everything was good. We went on about our business. So you can't just have a separate set of rules. That's exactly right. The rules are the same for everybody. So, so we have to be clear in that we're not making an exception, that they follow the same rules as everybody else, so that we aren't arbitrary or capricious. That is correct. And you hit the nail on the head here. You can't talk about anybody else's kids. That's the point to be made there. Yes, they can come as long as they observe the same rules as everybody else. That is correct. All right, very good. Very good. I'll close that one. Let's see, we got Alan, Samantha, Frank. Y'all want to share? You want me to share?
If you wouldn't mind, you can share.
I'd be glad to. All right, here we go.
Thank you. So after talking amongst us, we looked at it, and just kind of breaking it down. Of course, everybody knows the background of the situation with the kids and everything. What we did kind of looking at it just as face value as the telephone calls being, pretty much so, as you can see, demanding and derogatory at the very least, threatening at the very least. And I don't subscribe that it was a veiled threat to the kids. I think that due to the phone calls, it was more than a veiled threat. That principal was in full reaction mode. So, that's exactly right. The student petition, while again, I have no issues with students making petition. I think it kind of like allows some free speech, but thinking about what they were petitioning, I don't think it was going in the right direction. And then the canceling of prom, I mean, I'm going to just bring this up real quick. I mean, I think we all know that we've seen more of a cancel culture in the past, and it's not just the past month. We've seen cancel culture in the past, couple of years grow to where if somebody doesn't like the way something is, they're just going to cancel it, and that's it. And I don't think that's the way to go with a lot of things to begin with, and certainly not something for prom, because in this situation, it was like, well, we can't get our way, so we're just going to cancel prom. And I think that was absolutely wrong.
Yes. And as we've seen, and as we've seen with COVID cancellations, I mean, what harm and what detriment that does.
Mhm.
I'm hoping, again, I might be putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with 22, but because we've had to close schools over COVID, we've had to cancel proms and graduations and other things, I'm hoping that this will bring some sense back to the cancel culture, to your point.
I think, and I want to agree with that, because I think what we're finding out more than more is that, just listening to what the American Academy of, pediatricians are saying is get these kids back, but that would be a whole other thing. Anyway, moving on. Looking at the heckler's veto, the way I interpret it is there's 2 sides to it. Obviously, the freedom of expression, but the thing about it is the way I looked at it is, with this, the way I interpret it is that, the administration Mary Lou took away Jimmy and Willie's rights and gave greater power to the parents and other students. Now that makes an imbalance, and that doesn't work out well for anybody. And then it kind of focused on, as you can see, suppression of rights. And, but the thing about it is, it was so passive aggressive. It's like, just wait till after graduation. Don't attend prom. Not the way to go. And again, I've seen this before in a school. So, but the other side of heckler's veto that I looked into it is that, in the situation where we're at, it doesn't take away people's ability to maintain order and discipline. So if these 2 kids were just way off the rails and there was something else going on that was affecting the order and discipline, this would have been an okay thing to say, listen, we got to restore the order and discipline. And the administration would have been well within their rights and their responsibilities and their duties to do that. But there didn't seem to be a real case with this. I do believe that had the petition become a bigger thing, it could have led to order and discipline issues by increasing the number of students that said, well, I'm in that petition and I just want it this way. And I think that had that petition gone forward and more forward, there could have been a real problem. And again, that's not just the petition by the parents, it's also the petition by the kids. And finally, again, there was a PDA issue, and I know there was, but then again, just deal with it the same way as you do other PDA infractions, much like you did with your student that wore the dress, Dr. Lamb. We had a situation like that at our school. Just come in dress code. Wear what you want, but come in dress code.
Yeah.
So those were my 2 opposing things of the heckler's veto. As far as the paradigm, obviously, injustice, obviously, this fairness was certainly lacking, and equity was not applied to all parties, and that was just obvious. I think that with care, I think care, really, this one kind of went hand in hand, because there wasn't a trust, there was no loyalty, and like I said, the principal's passive aggressive, but the concern and connection only seems to exist for one group of students, and that just doesn't, that was not where it needed to be. So back to what are in the notes for role of the principal, there were the relationships and collaborations and shared decision-making connections. They're not consistent. There's not evident except for the students wishing to enlighten others. And in that situation, I would say, hey, you got kids that are actually wanting to do the right thing, and let's teach somebody something. We go to school to learn things, so there you go. But attention and support are not noted, obviously, for the 2 subjects of this case. I think the only attention and support that they were getting were from their parents, because they certainly weren't getting it from the administration. So critique in such a situation, or just basically human rights are violated. All right, there's a bit of social class favoritism for the parents, and we've seen that back with the Bobby case. But in this situation, the parents that got involved really tried to throw their weight around, and I don't think it was something that they were playing around with. I think they were all too serious. But as far as profession, this is a hand in hand. The accountability for social security success was 0, because they're shutting off one side of somebody's rights, and that's not right. And like I said, ethical behavior at the very least is mediocre, and there you go. And the safeguarding of values of diversity and equity just didn't seem to be there. I mean, I think that was a problem. And then a case, when we know we're looking at this, there's legal consequences written all over this. So everything from FERPA to First Amendment to 14th Amendment to equal access. the principal was kind of, if in this situation, if this was a situation, principal would be backed in a corner. There's not hardly any way to defend it, and it was definitely not in the best interest of all students for as far as rights and respect. We just didn't feel that way. What we talked about is that her comment was inappropriate and definitely violates Jimmy's and Willie's rights. She had the responsibility to protect the rights of all students, despite how they feel about a particular person or gender, but she didn't do it. And principals and teachers and community leaders are always striving to create an environment that is inclusive and welcoming, not anything that marginalizes students or pushes them to the side. And that's something we want to make sure we never do. Now, under the Constitution, we have to address any harassment against LGBTQ students in the same way we'd address harassment against any other students. I mean, it's not separate but equal. It's just equal. That's the thing about this harassment. It doesn't mean, oh, well, you're an LBG, well, we got to do it this way. No, it's all the same. So Title IX bars public schools from ignoring harassment based on gender or stereotyping. And what we've seen in the past couple of years is how Title IX, somebody actually got into it and really realized what it could do. And so you're starting to see it being applied to a lot of people in higher powered positions. If they don't do what they're supposed to, they get slapped, with a Title IX lawsuit, and it's costing people. So, and of course we wanted to look at, the possibility of improving community spirit here. So that wasn't something that was happening. So, prom is a school function. Now, one of the people that is in my group, she's in charge of her school of prom every year. So bless her heart for that.
Yeah.
It's just okay. And we had a real good discussion because she was talking about things they deal with their prom, some things we deal with our prom, and everybody's is different. But we basically, it's a school function. Everyone has the right to attend prom regardless of the orientation. So, the thing about it is, if the person didn't feel comfortable with them attending prom, that they have the right whether to not attend as well. That doesn't mean they have to cancel it, but definitely want to do what's in the best interest of everyone. So there's that. So looking at the legal precedents of Nabozny versus Podlesny, we're looking at it. We're a situation where it was harassment of a gay student, and not a good answer to that, but it wound up turning out well because it turned into a good court case for a victory. But we have to address any harassment, and a federal education law. And that was from the previous slide. I'm sorry, but that's that. But Jimmy and Willie should be allowed to attend prom as a couple, just based on 14th Amendment and Title IX. And that alone would kind of shut that door. And we can't ignore harassment based on the appearance and behavior that doesn't, quote, match your gender of boys who wear makeup, girls who dress like a boy, or vice versa. No school officials can tell students that they have to change who they are, or harassment. Like, you can't say, well, you can come to the prom, but as long as you dress like a boy, as long as you have the dress code, you can go. So that was something that we looked at really closely. And this is from the other thing. And the legal precedence on this was Flores versus Morgan Hill. School officials who did not take formal action when both discrimination and abuse are evident can be held liable. And that is something that I think that when I kind of brought that up in our group, it was one of the things everybody kind of knew it, but wow, there it is in writing. It's not up for discussion. So we don't do what we're supposed to do. Like you said, you could lose your house. So there's that.
Exactly right.
And as far as addressing minimize, this is a situation where I took it more like, and this was one of my slides but I took it more from just basically, how do you address it? Obviously, you follow the district policy and you form administration of all findings, but you definitely have to follow district policy. You can't go out on your own. And something that I got from my discussion board is that no matter where the bullying or cyberbullying occurred, or whoever owns the advice, it's irrelevant if the educational environment is disrupted. So that has to be addressed. And at that point, make sure you get the complaints and concerns of bullying and take each seriously. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't look at the other way, because I think too many times we've seen that, and we've seen it turn out really badly. And I think obviously complaints are confidential. That's not up for, we already know that, but make sure you get evidence in both sides of the story. And again, never ever hesitate to involve law enforcement to pursue these investigations as needed, because sometimes these things go out of the power of administration and they do get to be a legal law breaking situation. And at that point, that's, we can do what we can do up to that point, and we can take it, we go from there. And I know we've had 3 cases at my school this year that elevated to the level of law enforcement. And it was a good thing, because had it not, probably something really bad would have happened. And I'm glad that they got it under control.
Right.
So, but reading the principal's law book, which I like you said, that's one you'll keep forever. And, it's been great, but just being able to find some of the cases that kind of back up what we talk about and what it's been really good. So that was a good reference for us.
Good. I'm glad you see that. I'm going to point out again, it doesn't matter who owns the device or where it occurs. If it disrupts the education environment, then you've got to do that. I want to bring up quickly the case in Kentucky with the clerk who refused to sell the 2 gay men a marriage license, and she was celebrated nationally and in her community. She was held to be a hero until she lost the court case, because she was held liable because she violated their constitutional rights. She violated their civil rights. She broke the law. She did all those things, and so she's now lost her house. And so my point there is, even though it might be the popular thing to do, you might be a hero, or you might get kudos and accolades from people who are applying the pressure. Nobody can ever give you permission to break the law. And if you do, there will be a reckoning and you will be held liable. Very good presentation.
I think in my reflection, I think the one thing that I remember saying, and I wanted to put it in this, but I didn't, was like you said, regardless of what your personal feelings or beliefs are, the law is the law, and we have to uphold that, because we're the pillars of what's right at the school. So whether we personally believe in it, it's not that's a whole other thing.
Immaterial.
Have to do what the law says.
It's immaterial. You signed on to be professional staff. Your first and foremost duty is to uphold the laws and policies of the federal, state, and local. That's the first thing that you signed on to do, first and foremost. Absent that, something bad will happen to you. Very good. Thank you.
Thank
you.
All
right. Next on our agenda, let's see, who do I have next on our agenda? I have this group. We have Juliet, Katie, Erica, Paulette, and Andrea. Do we have anybody from these groups who would like to kick us off?
Sure.
All right, Juliet, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I think everyone kind of went over everything already. So at the risk of sounding repetitive, we'll just hit highlights. Okay, is that okay? That's great. That's what I'd like to do, because you've got a couple more cases in here that I really liked. The first one is on this one here. So go right ahead. Okay, so we could talk about Peake versus Lynch in 1980, where the court held that the same-sex couples must be granted attendance to school dances. However, there's limits placed on public displays of affection, regardless of their sex. There you go. See, that I consider that to be kind of the key to this entire case. You've got to do the antecedents, the public displays that they didn't, but you can't just say, that's what I was referring to earlier. You can't just say this class of people can't come, or we limit. This is the law that I was referring to. This is Frick versus Lynch, 1980. It says school dance. I mean, it speaks directly to prom. It says school dance. You got to let them come. Right. But there are limits on public displays of affection. That is correct. Right. And in this case, they had to add additional security for the kids' safety. So, because they still were able to attend.
Right. And so the veiled threat is if you come, I'm afraid you'll get hurt. What you're saying is I'm not going to provide you that security that you're legally required to provide them. You're saying the opposite. I'm going to let them get you if you come.
Right.
And so that's the linchpin in for that piece of this case that I was referring to. Very good.
Oh, well, good. Okay, so we already talked about this, but is there anything else we should add? So basically, we felt as a group the same thing, similar to everyone else,
Right.
that it was a threat. What the principal said.
Right. And you've hit all the right notes on these, and you've quoted the ACLU, the 1980 court case. It's the same case. And so you are correct. We do get into anti-bullying, and North Carolina, as we covered last week from our manual, North Carolina is one of those states that has anti-bullying, and it was in the manual that we covered last week. And so, so yes, not only are we not to be punitive against Jimmy and Willie, we have to actively work to abrogate the behaviors that others are bringing against them. We're not only required to, to let Jimmy and Willie go to prom, we're also required to stop the behavior of those that are threatening Jimmy and Willie.
Right.
And so it's not just a passive, there's an active piece of this as well.
Right.
So I'm glad that your group brought that out. Excellent. Excellent. But I am certainly, again, this is kind of the linchpin case right here that speaks directly to this case study. That is correct. Excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got, let's see what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this one. Carrie, Amy, I've seen Anthony, Melissa.
Yes, I'll start.
Thank you, Anthony.
Case summary. All right, so here's the case summary. We have the two seniors, both male, totally displayed affection at Red Creek High School. The principal, Ms. Hines, overwhelmed with negative calls, emails, etc. Requested immediate intervention. She asked the students to refrain from their behaviors. The students want to attend the prom as a couple. The students and parents request support, and the students wish to educate their peers regarding the fairness and acceptance. Okay. So question one. For our answer, we have Ms. Haynes urged the parents to speak sense and suggest that there could be danger from their actions. She viewed their attendance to the prom as a disruption to the learning process. We said yes. She's implying expectations of violence.
That is correct. She has implied it. That is correct.
So if we have for question two, in the past cases, the court have consistently ruled in the favor of students, right, as long as there isn't a clear and present danger or a material of disruption. Since there's actions are not a material disruption to learning, the principal does not have a legal standing.
That is correct.
Right. Where's
So
Melissa, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. This was the latest Supreme Court hearing. It was a few weeks ago. Dr. Lamb referenced it or referred to it rather, and a couple last week. And I looked it up, and it was about Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The article that I read in Forbes was by Wesley Whistle, and he stated that the legal ruling to protect educators who were being discriminated against based on their sexual orientation was illegal. And since that ruling was made, it will impact students later on should a case go to court.
That is correct. That will be the precedent.
Correct.
That's why I said it's very important because it will have far-reaching impact, not just for the folks who work in the business, but for students as well. It will trickle down to them. That is correct.
And question 3 was about her responsibility. And we decided as a team that, of course, as we've mentioned before, they should be allowed to attend prom, that they should be protected from threats, they should be allowed to pursue the GSA club and or a day of silence. However, we all agreed that, you know, Ms. Hines should remind them. Of course, if she would have reminded them in the beginning, this might not have been a case at all, which we discussed earlier, but there is an existing PDA policy. I'm sure every school has one, and they have to adhere to that public display of affections policy.
And so then we talked about that the principal should let Jimmy and Willie attend the prom as a couple, because if not, it would be discrimination. And that principals must safeguard the values of democracy, equity, and diversity, and that they must show concern and connection, and we must protect human rights.
So when it comes to addressing bullying and cyberbullying, like everyone else has said, they may face backlash from their peers. I feel like, you know, we talked about how backlash could happen either way. The principal must remember to take action against the students who violate the laws and policies, and to be vigilant regarding the students' threats. Even though we've kind of talked about, she took it a little bit too far with the heckler's veto. This was a quick tips for mainly for all of us to remember. Make sure you use an electronic device policy, that you know it, and enforce it. Avoid searches of devices unless there is a reasonable suspicion. Investigate instances that impact the school and learning environment, regardless of where they happen. Educate students about cyberbullying. Make sure they understand what they're doing and what the consequences could be. And then heckler's veto, which we've talked a lot about already tonight.
Yeah, Brown versus Louisiana 66, landmark case there. Thank you for citing that. Excellent job. Excellent job. I'm going to put Amy on the spot. Her eyes get big. I'll try not to call her call her out. Amy is in a county, in a county district that's had some problems lately, and they started a number of years ago. I live in the next county east of the county that she's in. And so I'm very aware of and get the news from there and those kinds of things. And the county had a case where a school administrator was accused of sexual impropriety. The case originally popped up about 16 years ago. Am I correct? 2004?
2007. I think,
well, it popped up in 2004 and nothing happened until 2007. It actually,
yeah, he was my principal in 2004, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, the rumors came out in 2004. Nothing happened. 3 years later, in 2007, they did remove him from the principalship. In 2007, I believe, was when he was actually removed. He stayed in the central office. The accusation was he was gay and that he was having relations with high school boys. And so
he was still the principal there in 2012 when my younger brother graduated. Yeah.
These things happened, and eventually he was removed. I should have been more clear. There was a suspension in 2007 with pay. He came back, stayed for a number of years, and then was removed. And then he was removed for a while and then went back again. All of those things. But in the end, what I was going to say, my point in that is this. Our first notion on many of those kinds of things is to try to cover them up, is to not deal with them, not be honest, If we ignore it, it will go away. And that's the piece of this that I wanted to make sure that we understood as well from this case. I think that's kind of what the principal did in the first part of this. We have a tendency to want to do that, even with administrators, even with things that as that one turned out to be really ugly and nasty. Our first thought is I don't know whether we're embarrassed or whether we don't want to get into it or what, but the case from Lincoln County is one of those that I know those are good people. They don't want children to be harmed. I'm not, but our first notion almost always is, let's cover this up, let's bury it, let's mitigate it, let's not deal with it out in an open and honest manner. And so I want to make sure that you understand this case is not that far-fetched. I know it sounds, gosh, this is the easy one, but it's not that far-fetched, because the very first thing people want to do is to hide it, ignore it, not deal with it, and then when there's some pressure, just do the easy thing, like the principal tried to do in this one. That, for whatever reason, that is kind of, we have historical precedent that's kind of the way that we do that. But that time is over, is what I am telling you. It will get you now. If you cover it up, if you don't deal with it, if you pretend you did an in-house investigation, what triggered this thought is getting the police involved. If you don't do those things, it's going to get you now. You're not going to get the pass that you one time had. Very good. Very good. All right. Tracy. I can close that. All right. We have anything from this group that would like to add to what we've gone over so far?
Well,
Teresa,
everyone
Eric?
like covered everything already. And did
Well,
a fantastic
that's the
job
good thing
already.
about going toward the end. That's exactly right. But we will give you the opportunity for anything that you'd like to add. I'll go through the slides. If there's anything, just stop me. If there's anything
I'll be honest, we talked a lot in our group about really the veiled threat and the implied and subtle intimidation.
Right.
But it was really her breaking those FERPA laws that we kind of had that longer kind of discussion about, because you cannot sit here and, confirm or deny anybody being LGBTQ. That is no one's business, not even the parents' business if they have to ask. So, she's not, in our opinion, we do think that, Mary Lou did very wrong in a variety of ways. And if you want to go to the last slide, that was kind of very much the ethical paradigms, is that she's not creating a school of equity, equality, justice, loyalty, trust, or really promoting any type of social justice for her students. Because, in our opinion, she broke really all four aspects of our ethical paradigm. And everyone did a fantastic job explaining all of their, pieces of it too. But she really showed how her position and power was those approved corrupted morals of her community.
That's correct.
You can't allow religious heritage to be a base for consequences in the school system. There's a reason there's religion, separation of religion and church from the state.
That is correct. That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. And so, all right. Kenny, Kayla, Stephanie, Diane, anything that you'd like to add to what we've gone over?
Oh boy, I was beginning to think you guys forgot about us over here.
I didn't forget about you. I draw you names out of the hat as to what order we go in.
Yeah, no, we went late last time, so we were like, dang, we're really gonna get missed again. But it's all good.
No, you're not gonna get missed. Y'all gonna have to go first next time.
And that's the kind of energy I like, Dr. Lamb. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so really everybody kind of did such a great job of kind of going over everything. So I think the best piece for us to go over is probably be like the ethical paradigms. What you think, guys? Would that probably be the best thing for us?
Sure.
All right. So I'm gonna go there. So the one thing that I'm not even sure if we have it on here, but they are. We have them in our presentation notes. So we're looking at our 4 ethical paradigms. The first one, justice. We're looking at not allowing Jimmy and Willie to attend prom together would probably be an injustice to them. it's also unjust to punish them for PDA if all students are not being held to the same standards.
That's correct.
One thing I was thinking to myself as we're going through that, I just feel like that's such a slippery slope, because I feel like, you know, human nature, sometimes we have just this innate, like, I guess, blinders to people who I guess seem normal to us. And sometimes I don't think we as administrators, as teachers, are doing enough job, a good enough job of just policing just the heterosexual couples. And so I just feel like even if we did get in front of that and stop it, I don't know how the principal would have been. She would have been right by stopping it early, but maybe there would have been backlash either way. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was referring to, is you got to tackle it for everybody.
For sure.
I mean, that's why I was talking about boys are dumb. So you can't just tackle it for the gay kids. You got to tackle it for everybody, and you're exactly right. If that's not the culture in that school community, you'll take a whipping. But you got to tackle it.
Exactly. And I'm just thinking,
tackle it for everybody.
Yeah, even though it's a hypothetical situation, I mean, I even found myself. We don't have any homosexual couples in my school, but I just think to myself, like, how many times have I just let quote unquote normal couples, heterosexual couples, get away with things like hugging or holding hands or something? And, you know, I'm just trying to put myself in that principal's shoes and just saying, okay, is there a situation where even if they did the right thing, would it sometimes be the wrong thing? Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Next, ethical paradigm, care. We should be caring and supporting all students and not punishing them for who they are, which I definitely agree with. Critique. Mary cannot violate the boys' human rights by punishing them for being gay or being attracted to each other. And finally, profession. It is unprofessional to suggest that the boys suppress who they are because of community or parent backlash. What we were hearing earlier with heckler's veto. This is a dangerous slope for legal litigation because of the violation of the students' rights under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
That is correct. Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Kishlin, Ingrid, Kareem, if y'all want to, I'll share my screen. I will stop my share, and who wants to share their screen for our last presentation? Kareem, all right, I will make you the host.
1 second. Yeah, we just I guess we're gonna touch on 1 or 2 things because we pretty much had what everybody else had. Okay, so Kishlin, is there anything you want to touch on?
I think we pretty much concurred with what everyone else said. The principal's ultimate job was to follow the law, and that's not what she did. She got caught up in the moment of just wanting to avoid negative publicity, and you can't do that. As Dr. Lamb said, you have to step out in front to deal with issues and problems. And the way that you do that is not to let your personal feelings come into it. You have to do it the lawful, legal way, unless you're seeking to lose your job. And so.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Kareem.
Okay, I was about to say, one of the points was, that Mary Lou should definitely not be discussing Willie and Jimmy with the Hudsons or anybody else. They said she was responding to the community and stuff, and, we're just wondering to what extent was she is responding. And also, we brought up the point that display of affection at school is generally not appropriate. So that's, whether there was a homosexual couple or a heterosexual couple. But also another thing that was from the reading was anytime administrators allow political groups, they have to allow opposing political groups. So if they do allow them to start their gay-straight alliance, they would possibly be opening up the avenue for somebody to start a different alliance opposing them. Am I correct with that?
That is correct.
And so we I guess we was kind of leaning on the side of what was Mary Lou's responsibilities as a principal? Was she more obligated to maintain a non-disruptive school environment or advocate for Willie and Jimmy? So I was thinking, everybody got up here and was saying, let them come to prom. I wasn't saying not let them come, but I was thinking it would be appropriate for Mary Lou to cancel the prom, and that way, straight kids wouldn't be able to go or gay kids wouldn't be able to go. So I was thinking, if she didn't have the resources to beef up security or to provide proper protection, then she should just cancel the prom. So I guess, can you give me some type of feedback? What's wrong with that mindset?
Well, you can't punish the many for the sins of the few. That would be under the standard of arbitrary. It would also be under the standard of capricious. That's too much punishment for the crime. If she feels like that she can't safely pull it off, then she would have to go to the district and get more assistance from them. But you would not be able to simply cancel because and claim safety as the reason to cancel. You'd have to have a clear threat. She doesn't have that. She does not have somebody who said, "I'm going to blow the gym up if we have this." And then you would have to take steps where you would have to mitigate that risk. So no, canceling the prom would not be an option in this case. That would be a violation of the students' rights as well. Also, I suspect the district there would be contracts and other issues that you would have if you cancel the prom. And so that's a whole nother legal case. That's a great question, because that leads us into liability and contract law and some of those kinds of things. And so the short answer, without spending an hour to get into contract law, is no, that would not be an option in this case.
So the protest threat from the parents and the students wouldn't be enough?
Not unless somebody said, "We're going to shoot people, we're going to blow people up." It can't be an implied threat. It would have to be. Now, there's been a lot of work done coming out of Columbine, and the shootings that occurred there, and Jonesboro, Arkansas, the shootings there in terms of what the liability is for not taking threats seriously. But in the end, you would have to have what's now deemed legally a credible threat in order to cancel that prom. And when we talk about contract law, there's two types. There's contract law like with the vendor, the band, the caterer, those kinds of things. But there's also the contract that you have with the students in terms of they paid their money. You have an implied contract with them as well. And you would have to have direct knowledge that somebody said, "I'm going to blow the place up," and have to be deemed a credible threat. There have to be some group that said, "I'm going to do this." It couldn't just be an anonymous phone call to the school. Couldn't be that.
One more question, then I'm going to let you go. So even if it was a type of protest where you got 100 students just standing outside blocking the entrance, that wouldn't be enough to...
No, we just call the police. We just call law enforcement.
Okay, it would have to be pretty much physical harm, threat for physical
harm. That's correct.
Okay.
That would be, that is correct. As we've seen lately in our country with the protests that we have, we've had people show up, counter protesters on both sides on different things recently, and the police, they can't just say we're canceling this protest march or you can't do this. It's the police's responsibility to respond to the people who are breaking the law. We can't that gets back to that cancel culture. If I don't like something, I'll just show up and protest, and you won't be able to have it. We can't allow that. That's against the law. And sometimes there's going to be a certain amount of disruption, as Tinker versus Des Moines in '69 said. Sometimes there's going to be, in First Amendment rights, there is a certain amount of disruption that's going to occur. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to be clean. But you can't allow heckler's veto. You can't allow the terrorists of the group to get their way simply by threatening violence. If that becomes the case, then we'll never have anything. We won't be able to do that. So that's excellent. So my question to you, and it's not, doesn't require an answer tonight. It's something I need for you to think about. As you know, Gardner-Webb, we're a private institution, but we are collaborative partners with public institutions. I had a charter school to come to me, or the parents from a charter school of one of the counties that we serve with our main campus, and from Rutherford County, a charter school parent came to me in my capacity at Gardner-Webb and said, why is it that our school can have a Gay Straight Alliance club, but the Bible club has to meet outside by the flagpole? And one of the things that I had to try to explain to him was Gay Straight Alliance is protected speech. But we have also, the Supreme Court has ruled that separation of church and state, but that's a separate class. Now, what he wanted to say is, well, this is not fair, this is not equitable. I can't make that argument for or against him. That's not the point. The point of this, what I'm saying to you is know the law. You can't meet a religious club inside the school. You can pray at the flagpole. It can be student led. You can have those kinds of things, but that's specifically because the law says there has to be a separation of church and state, because a charter is a state school. Conversely, the Gay Straight Alliance is protected by federal laws, in terms of their protected speech. And so that's why. Now, you need to learn to avoid the political argument of the red state, blue state, this group, that group. Always follow the law. Whatever the law is, whether you agree with it or whether you don't agree with it, know and follow the law. And so I don't think that the parent was happy with the explanation that I gave him. I think he was unhappy with the way the law was written. It wasn't my job to make him happy. My job was to explain to him the differences in the two. And so that's my charge to you in thinking about this going forward. Every parent that comes in and complains, your job is not to make them happy. You'd like to. That would be, in a perfect world, that would be what would be happening. But that's not your job to make them happy. Your job is to follow the law. And if you always remember that, then things will go well for you. I thank you for your time and attention tonight. Next week, we have class, our final class. Dr. Stedman is going to talk to us about your competency folios. You can go ahead and get started on those this week. You should be nearing the end of your skip. And so you should have pretty much all of your artifacts together to go in and start putting that second round of those in there. Shouldn't take you very long, as long as you can find your stuff. That's my problem at my age, is finding my stuff. I've got it, it's just don't know where it is. But if you can find your artifacts, it shouldn't take you very long to do that. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have our final case study. Now, our final case study, you need to start looking at it. It's pretty involved. It encapsulates everything that we've covered this semester. So be thinking about it as you read through it. Don't get hung up on it didn't happen in this country. That's just to throw you off. But it's going to encapsulate everything we did in the skip in terms of parent involvement, the OMA about scheduling and doing walkthroughs. It's going to EC law, equal opportunity, following the law, rights. It's got it all. It's got everything. Everything that we've covered this semester is in this final case. You should be able to just absolutely, you should get it all. If you've learned everything that I believe that you've learned this semester, this one, even though it's going to be so many different layers to this one, I think you'll get it all. But understand that, yes, it is a big one. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's supposed to encapsulate everything that we did this semester. So you might want to get started on it early, just as a, you got 2 weeks. So I'll give you the heads up. I appreciate you coming out tonight. As always, I enjoyed it. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stedman.
Yeah, I just want them to know that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time next week because they know what to do. This group did a good job. So it's just really going to be a recap, a very quick recap. And you can ask questions if you need to ask questions, but it's going to be more of a reminder. But all that stuff that Dr. Lamb and I did in 601, where we showed you, we're not going to take the time to do all that because you know how to do all that. Okay.
But we'll follow up with any questions. That's why I say if you can, go ahead and get started this week. And if you have a question or issue, we'll certainly deal with it.
Great presentations tonight. Great presentations.
Not, y'all are, think about how far you've come in just 6 or so weeks in terms of now you're starting to nail it in terms of what's the law say. That's what I was most pleased about tonight. You hit all the cases, the reference, the seminal works in these, the cases that were held and that are the precedents in these. That's the things you need to be working on. That's the stuff you need to read.
Yeah,
and
they
I think
were all very articulate, very well. It was very professionally presented, everybody, again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And remember the words of Alan, that book, it costs a lot of money, but that's a keeper. That law book is a keeper. So I'm glad that he has confirmed that for you as well. I'll see you next week. Everybody have a good week. Stay safe. Prayers for Paulette. We'll see you all next week. Thank you.